sometimes you don't want to talk about your problems. I understand that completely. So you can go and have some brain training and get some changes without the need to talk.
Trăim într-o lume în care știm totul despre corp, dar prea puține despre minte.
Brain health is really about sleep. So I think the number one thing people need to do is sleep. Number two,
what sleeping means, having a good sleep? Astăzi, misterul începe să se deschidă, pentru că tehnologia modernă poate vedea ceea ce noi nu reușim să simțim, poate măsura anxietatea, cartografia trauma și identifica potențialul.
There are techniques that we can teach people that combine that physiological element and that spiritual psychological level to bring a more robust element of well-being to the person.
Omul care ne ghidează în această lume este unul dintre cei mai respectați experți ai planetei. Santiago Brand, specialist în brain mapping, neurofeedback și optimizare neurală, venit din Singapore în România pentru a ne arăta cât de mult putem transforma dacă înțelegem ce se întâmplă în creierul nostru.
We have a more interesting life by being stressed and having a lot of things to do every day.
Oh, absolutely. And I also think that social media contributes to it, because platforms like Instagram and TikTok, well, they're great. They also sell you this idea that there's this great life out there for you, and if you don't have 1 million followers on your Instagram and you don't have all these glamorous pictures, your life is really not worth living.
Un episod despre știință, conștiință, performanță și vindecare. Un episod care sparge mituri, clarifică întrebări și deschide ușa către viitorul sănătății mentale.
Santiago, hello. Thank you first of all for being here. I want to know how did it all begin and how did you fall in love with the brain and the technology behind it?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm very excited. This started back in 2007 when I was doing my studies in sports psychology. So I'm a clinical and sports psychologist. And one of my passions always been sports. So I was not happy with the traditional methods for sports psychology. And I got into this quest of looking for ways of being more objective in reading, if you will, an athlete's mind, their thoughts. And I started doing a Google search and I came across the words biofeedback, neurofeedback, and that got me interested. So I started looking. And coincidentally, that week, they had invited a gentleman who specialized in neurofeedback, biofeedback, and he was going to do a 2-day workshop. So I registered for the workshop, and the first thing he does is he takes out all this technology and he starts playing with us, testing our brain waves and looking at our heart rate. And the more I did it, the more I fell in love with that. So you could say it was literally love at first sight. It was wonderful. And I knew right there and then that that's what I wanted to do. So I got into this journey of testing the technology, playing with that. I was doing my internship with the Colombian Olympic Committee at the time, and they had this equipment that they hadn't used in a long time. So I took it out and I started playing with that. I really had no idea what I was doing, but the more I used it, the more I liked it. So when I finished my internship and I worked there for a while, I moved back to the United States and I did my very first training, my very first class in 2008.
Okay, 1 year later.
1 year later. And then I met a neuropsychologist near Orlando, Florida, who was reopening her clinic. And she said, would you like to come work for me? And I ended up working for her for 2 years. Then I resigned, moved back to Colombia, where I'm from. And as they say, the rest is history. So here we are 17 years later.
Wow. And that was actually the moment when you made the transition from the traditional psychology to this kind of technology?
Correct. And when I say transition, I would say it's more combining both techniques.
Okay.
But I really like what the technology has to offer. And of course, this is 2008, today in 2025, the technology is far more advanced. So what we can do and see is far more advanced as well.
If you would choose just one thing you could do with this technology, and you cannot do it with the traditional psychology, what would be?
The brain training.
Okay.
Because it's more direct, it's more objective, it's more organic, and it really provides a lot of shifts and changes that you don't see with traditional therapy. It's not necessarily better, but in many ways it is stronger than traditional interventions. And it creates the flexibility and the plasticity in the brain for the changes to last for a long time. Essentially forever.
Do you think that we or the people are realizing that we can train our brain?
I think more and more. I think there's a wave, not only in Romania, but around the world, in where people don't want to use medication alone, and they want to test new effective ways of doing that. And the brain training is one of them. And more, everywhere I go, we're finding that the professionals who are using that are getting magnificent results with people. They're literally changing and transforming lives, which is an amazing thing to see.
But when was the moment you realized that neuroscience can truly change lives?
I had a case once when I had my clinic in Colombia. I wrote an article about brain mapping for a newspaper, a local newspaper. And this gentleman calls me and tells me, my name is so-and-so, and I was involved in this big terrorist attack. We had a big terrorist attack back in 2000 and something, and he was there. His brothers had sadly perished, and it was a car bomb that was placed into a country club in the parking garage. So he suffered a traumatic brain injury to the point he almost perished as well. He had to learn to walk again. He had to learn to go to the bathroom again. He had to learn to write again. And he was 20-something, close to 30 years old when this happened, a young man. And he had to learn to do everything like he was born again. So he contacts me and tells me, can we do the brain training? I said, well, let's give it a go. And we worked with him very hard for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And he went from that to doing an MBA in Harvard. Today, he's happily married with children, and his life is completely different. He credits the brain training to part of the interventions that really saved life. The one person who was really grateful was his mother, because as a consequence of the brain injury, he became a very aggressive person. So the mom said, either you get help or I'm not talking to you anymore. And the mom was very emotional, and she was very happy because we brought her son back with the same emotion, the same humor. So he was able to be his old self again.
That's very nice. That's very nice. You are here in Romania to learn other specialists to use this technology. We are talking about iMedicine. First of all, tell us, for those who doesn't know, what iMedicine is.
Well, iMedicine is this technology that comes from South Korea. It's a helmet that many people say looks like the Back to the Future helmet or a Stormtrooper helmet, but it's a bicycle helmet. It looks like a bicycle helmet that you place on your head, and it can read the electrical activity of the brain, meaning it can do what we call the electroencephalogram or an EEG. And from there, you can create through AI images of the person's brain. So we can do 3D images with color-coded maps. And what that helps us find is where a person's brain is not working well. So anybody who wears the helmet can do it and can detect where their brain needs some fine-tuning. Whether you're not sleeping well and you want to sleep better, we can help you with that. Whether you have some emotional issues, your mood fluctuates, we can help you make it more stable. Whether you have problems with your memory, your child is not doing well at school, we can help with these things through brain training. So we're not diagnosing, we're not curing, but we're doing brain training. And the objective is to stabilize, optimize brain functioning. And by that, we mitigate symptoms. Sometimes, a lot of times, we can eliminate symptoms. So it's just one more tool, which is part of an arsenal of interventions.
This technology was brought in Romania by Diana Parotaz. She's the founder of Neuros. She actually was here in my podcast with the technology. It was very interesting to know all that kind of stuff. And I'm very curious. How do you see the level of interest and the openness among Romanian specialists toward this technology?
Well, I have to say, I've been doing this, traveling around the world for about 5 years now, more consistently. And I will say Romania is the country where I've seen the largest and fastest growth.
Okay.
It's very impressive. This is the 4th training we do in Korea, in Romania. This is my 4th time in Romania. And last training we had 130 to 150 people. But what's really impactful to me is that we have a larger number of medical professionals open and interested in this. When I started in 2008, it was practically a miracle to find a medical professional, somebody in the medical sciences interested in this. In this training, we had 6 neurologists, I think 3 or 4 cardiologists, a couple of neurosurgeons, nutritionists, 1 anesthesiologist, and total, I think we had about 10 to 15 medical professionals, which is really nice. And besides Indonesia, Romania is the country where we see medical professionals getting the most interest. We've had passionate parents who just want to learn about the technology and spread the word. I spoke with the mother of a child who was actually a patient of Diana, who was being helped with some epilepsy and absence seizures. So with the use of the technology plus other interventions, she's been able to get brain under regulation and the symptoms to go down. And this has obviously been cleared by a neurologist who's a medical professional who can claim that. So seeing this, it's very emotional. I am quite excited because the work that Diana is doing here is fantastic. Not only promoting the technology, but gathering a group of bright, passionate minds. We finished the training last week, and I have to say it's probably one of the best groups that I worked with in a long time. They were very passionate, very interested, very engaged. And most of all, I see that I could see in their eyes that they genuinely want to help society. And that's the greatest thing to me.
Yes, it is. Before you tell me how do you know Diana, I just want to ask you regarding these trainings, if they're going to receive maybe in the future some international certification, the specialists which are attending your training.
Yes, that's what we're organizing to do, because besides getting the high quality training and education, we want to ensure that they meet specific international standards which certify that they are being ethical and responsible with the work. And international certifications are one of the best ways to do that. So we're working hard together with Diana to bring this to Romania, make it formal, and help grow the community around the world. That's one of the main objectives.
And how do you know Diana?
I met Diana last year. I was invited to do a training at the University of Oxford. I was doing this course in San Antonio, Texas, in the U.S., and there was a gentleman who went to Oxford. So he told me, would you like to bring this training to Oxford University? I said, yes. And Diana was there. So when I spoke with Diana, this is March of last year, if memory serves me right. And she said, would you like to come to Romania? I said, sure. When she says, 2 months from now.
Okay.
So she was ready to get going. I knew that. I mean, she's a very driven person. She's a magnificent businesswoman and an excellent professional. And what I like about her is how driven and passionate she's about it. So 2 months later, I was here for the first time doing my first training, and now we've done 4. And I love coming here. It's just such a wonderful experience. You know, the people are very hospitable. The food is great. And the professionals we get to work with are really outstanding people.
Do you think you're going to change how we think about this technology?
Oh, I definitely see the tide is turning for the positive.
Okay.
I think that mental health professionals and other health science professionals are becoming more interested and seeing this technology as a tool for change, for positive change. Because now we have the ability at a cost-efficient way, to help people realize how and why the brain is not working well. And we can have access to more specific and efficient interventions. So with this, we can guide people to go see a nutritionist and adapt their diet for brain health, to get the best supplementation possible. If medication is needed, now we can work hand in hand with the medical professionals who can use this information to guide the best medication approach. So we're working from a holistic perspective because I think that's how medicine should be practiced. I think that's how well-being should be practiced. We should integrate all these health sciences for the common good of people. We should not be working as separate entities because the human body and the mind are not separate entities. We're a combination and a compilation of things.
The training you are doing, it is for iMedicine technology.
Yes.
There is differences between this technology, iMedicine, and other neurofeedback technologies.
Right. One of the biggest differences they bring into the field is that now you can do what we call dry electrodes. So essentially, you can put on the helmet, and without the need of any additional gel or any additional substances on the hair, you can get a good recording, a quick recording, and a reliable recording. That's one of the things, because sometimes the client doesn't want to go and get gel into their hair because that means they have to go back and they have to wash their hair. And if they have to go to work, that takes time away from their day.
So it's very easy to use.
It's very easy and practical. It's very simple. The application is very simple. And they have this very nice AI interactive platform that I think facilitates the work of the clinician. Now, the AI does not replace the clinician by any means, but it helps the clinician understand what they're looking at more efficiently. And if the clinician is talented enough, if they are careful enough, if they're professional enough and they're interested enough, they can really do a great job with this technology.
Okay, the people using this technology, iMedicine, what can they discover about their brain?
Well, mainly what we do when we look at brain activity is we want to see where the brain is working well and how we can help it work even better. So let's say you have an athlete, sports person, or a corporate CEO, and their brain is relatively normal, quote unquote normal. You can make them perform better. But you can also bring somebody who has some kind of complaint, some kind of issue that's been bothering them for a while, their sleep, their memory, their emotions.
Okay.
Well, we can see specifically in the brain where the dysregulation is and how we can make it better. And this is very important because if we talk, for example, about depression, we could scan 5 or 6 different people with a complaint or symptoms of depression.
Okay, so you can see the depression, the stress, the trauma.
Correct.
You can see all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but more importantly, where in the brain is coming from, because depression doesn't look the same for everybody.
No.
ADHD doesn't look the same for everybody. Okay. The symptoms are the same, the complaints are the same, but the brain area where it comes from may be different. And the pattern that is associated to that brain region is different. So we can be really, really specific. With pinpoint accuracy, we can find what the problem is.
But the depression, from where can it be?
Well, depression could come from lack of sleep. Somebody's not sleeping well. Depression could come from the fact that the person had a brain injury or brain injuries before. Depression could come from the temporal lobes or the frontal lobes. Some people have more activity in the temporal lobes, and that's a little bit of a different type of depression than what you get from the frontal lobes. So even though they complain of sadness and feeling down, the brain area where it's coming from, it's different. And so once we can find this quite specific approach. And that's what makes it all the difference.
And after you discover this kind of, let's say, problems in the patient brain, what do you do after that?
Well, the technology involves this technique called photobiomodulation, which in layman terms is red light therapy. So the person can put on the helmet, and then there's LEDs, there's little bulbs that send this red light at a specific frequency into the brain. And what that does, it acts into the mitochondria, which is the power base of the cell. So it helps bring down inflammation in the brain. It creates more neurons. It strengthens network connections. What you're seeing then is structural, chemical, and functional changes in the brain that you can measure. You can measure with an EEG, you can measure with an MRI. But the point is that you can see the change from pre to post, meaning I scan you today and I work with you for, let's say, 3 weeks. I scan you again in 3 weeks. We can see the difference or the differences, but you will also experience them. You will tell me, I'm sleeping much better. I'm not forgetting things as much anymore. people with anger problems, they say, I can sense when the anger is coming and I can control it now, which is a huge change. Because normally for people with anger, what happens is they just react and they get into trouble for that. Now they can sense when it's coming and they can implement all these strategies to keep it at bay. People with migraines, they tell me, I can feel the migraine coming. And, we've been able to eliminate migraines in people who had migraines every month. They're migraine-less or migraine-free for the rest of their lives. For some of them, we can dramatically reduce the occurrences.
So it's like going to the gym with your brain.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing a workout. It's a brain training modality. That's what it is.
And what's happening after you stop using this technology?
Well, if you have a relatively healthy lifestyle, which means you're protecting your sleep, you're eating relatively well, if you exercise enough, you should be okay. For most people, the changes last forever. Some people, let's say like older people, senior citizens, they need to go for tune-ups every now and then. But if you have a relatively healthy brain, this can change for the better and for good with quite a high degree of accuracy.
You've already seen more than 100 Romanians start using this technology. What's the feedback? What feedback did you get from them?
Well, from the trainings, I'm grateful to know that people enjoy the trainings, enjoying my style of teaching. They're very appreciative that I can make brain science look more relatable to them, because this is really not an easy subject. It takes years and years and years of study. My mission when I teach is to make people excited about this, and excited enough that they will be in this for a long time. When I see the glow in their eyes because they're liking what I'm talking about, I know I'm doing my job. So the first thing I would say is the professionals in Romania have a high degree of adherence to this. They're hooked and they want to do this. In terms of the results, people send me messages all the time. I've been working with this client who had headaches and they're not reporting headaches anymore. I'm working with this child who has a diagnosis of autism and wasn't speaking, and now he's communicating with people. I get to see very powerful testimonies from the professionals, and they're very excited that they get to be a part of this wave of transformation. And to me, that's the greatest thing.
Yes, when Diana was here in my podcast and she talked about this technology and about brain training, for me also it seemed very interesting. And knowing that you can train your brain, it is a very important thing, and that's why I invited you today here to talk about this, because I want that everybody knows that we can train our brain. And if we have, depression, like you said before, or maybe anxiety, stress, or some kind of trauma, we can pass this kind of problem and maybe have a better life.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's very important for people to understand that they don't have to suffer in silence anymore. That we are creating this network, this community of professionals who are getting the best training possible and who are passionate to help you. So if somebody's listening or watching this, rest assured that there is help, that you don't have to be alone, that you can ask for help. And the best thing about the technology is sometimes you don't want to talk about your problems. I understand that completely. So you can go and have some brain training and get some changes without the need to talk. Some people then want to do talk therapy afterwards, and that's commendable. That's beautiful. But the most important thing is for people to know there is help out there. And we're creating this large community of professionals all over Romania who are here to genuinely help those who are suffering in silence.
You talked earlier about EEG or brain mapping. For those who are hearing for the first time these terms, how can you explain again and maybe in more detail what EEG means.
Right. Well, the EEG is the electroencephalogram.
Okay.
So if you think of a seismograph, when there's an earthquake and you see the lines moving on that machine, the EEG is quite similar. But the best description of the EEG is it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. So it's just lines that will go up and down, and those lines represent brain waves. And the brain waves represent the different neurons in the brain communicating. So when we do a brain map, we want to see, is your brain working at an ideal level? Good for you. Let's make you work better. Let's make you better at what you do. Are you not feeling well? Okay, let's find how we can help you feel better. So we can see those squiggly lines that go up and down, and then we convert it into images, 3D images. So we can show you 3D images of your brain in colors, and we can see with different color codings the areas of the brain that need help, and how we're going to help those areas get help. So the greatest added value of doing a brain map is we never ask the patient to tell us anything about them. We let the brain do the talking. So whenever I have somebody hooked up to the helmet and I'm seeing the brain waves, I will tell them, it looks to me like you forget things here and there. And they smile and they go, yeah, that's right. It looks to me like you're not sleeping too well. And they say, well, how do you know that? It's the brain sending the message. So we're talking to your brain, and we trust your brain. I like to operate, and this is one of my favorite principles, and it is people lie, but the brain doesn't. So if somebody's telling me I'm feeling okay, but I look at their brain activity, I will say, I'm going to go with what your brain is telling me. And your brain is telling me that you're not okay here or there. So it really helps bring down these barriers that people create. And I think one of the most wonderful elements, it reduces the stigma around mental health significantly. I think this is going to help people and make people seek help without feeling stigmatized. And that's the greatest thing to me. Normally, people don't go for therapy because the first thing the loved ones or those close to them are going to say is, you're crazy. But when people say, I'm going for a brain scan, that's not what people think. People go, oh, why do you do that? Yes. That's really exciting.
Sounds cool.
I want to do that too, right? So the technology is really helping us. And if you have the marriage of technology plus a wonderful professional, I mean, there's no stopping that. What the things that we can do are really limitless. And I'm really excited about that.
What do you think about burnout in these days? There are a lot of patients coming to you with burnout?
Yes. Yeah, I think people are tired for different reasons. One of the main ones is the expectations that we set at the social level. You know, we've come to love being busy. We've come to love also not having time to rest. You know, we've come to romanticize being stressed, you know, and we romanticize the idea of undergoing all this stress and pushing as hard as we can. And I think that's the incorrect message we're sending to people. And I think when people come with burnout, it's mainly because they have been trying to fit in this societal mold that they cannot realistically fit in. So your brain pays the price, your body pays the price, and sometimes it's a very dear price to pay for it.
You said that we love being busy and we romanticize being stressed, but do you think we hate being alone?
I think we do. We definitely are social beings. We need company.
And maybe that's why we try to keep being busy and stressed, and we think that we have a more interesting life by being stressed and having a lot of things to do every day.
Oh, absolutely. And I also think that social media contributes to it, you know, because platforms like Instagram and TikTok, while they're great, they also sell you this idea that, you know, there's this great life out there for you. And if you don't have 1 million followers on your Instagram and you don't have all these glamorous pictures, your life is really not worth living. And I think that people are sadly falling into this train of thought, into this tendency. And I don't think that's helpful, you know. I mean, if you look at my Instagram, I don't have millions of followers. I just do my job, and whoever wants to follow me follows me. You know, I don't subscribe to the idea of I have to have as many followers as Andrew Huberman, or I'm not worth as a professional. You know, if I don't have as many followers as Matthew Walker, then I'm not worth as a professional. I know that what I do will bring value to some people, and I know that my followers appreciate what I do. If I were to, to try and follow this idea that I have to be like them, I would probably be in very serious trouble, emotionally and psychologically.
But because we see on Instagram, I don't know, 60 seconds, I'm talking about this kind of reels, 60 seconds from that person's life, but we don't see the other day, the other hours. And we think that, this guy has an interesting life, he has a lot of money, he drives, I don't know what kind of car, but we don't know the reality.
Yeah. What you say is so true. I've had the opportunity to work with so many influencers, lady influencers, and these are very attractive women with lots of followers. But a lot of them also are very insecure themselves and depressed and anxious, and they're human beings. So I'm not trying to chastise anybody here. They're as human as you and I. Mm-hmm. It's just to show that the life that Instagram portrays is a fantasy. It doesn't really exist. Nobody is that happy 24/7. Nobody feels that successful all the time. Nobody has that level of self-esteem. We all struggle. And I think it's important for people to understand that, that if you are not part of this trend, it doesn't mean that you're not worth as a person. You're not enough, I think that's a message that we have to get out there.
You said about self-esteem. How can we increase our self-esteem and self-love?
I think self-esteem is quite strongly connected to confidence. I think to the degree you can do things confidently, knowing that you're doing your best, you will have good self-esteem. And I think healthy self-esteem comes from not caring what other people think. I always tell people, as long as you're not doing anything illegal or immoral, who cares what you're doing? Mm-hmm. If you're doing things in an illegal and immoral way, you should worry. Yeah. But if you're not doing anything illegal or immoral, then do what you want to do, say what you want to do, look the way you want to do. Again, because we look at all these models from the physical perspective, from the psychological perspective, mostly from the physical. A lot of women I talk about just want to look like the Instagram models. And that's not a realistic thing. It's different genetics. Some of these women use filters. So if people can be happy with who they are and they can be as healthy and they can be law-abiding people, I think that's good self-esteem.
This is how you've been educated, or you learned this later in life?
Oh, a little bit of both. Because it's very easy, especially when you're younger, to really fall into the trap. When I was younger, I was lucky enough to grow without the influence of social media. Yeah. But there were other means of being, of being captured into this trend. And, over time, as you get older, you learn not to care so much about those things, I mean, if you have learned from your experiences, I think you become wise enough to realize that, life is very short and it's not worth pursuing these things, So it's been a combination of learning the hard way.
Where did you grow?
Sorry?
Where did you grow?
I grew up in Colombia.
Oh, okay.
I'm currently based in Singapore, but I was born and raised in Colombia.
Okay. I think here in Eastern Europe, things are more differently, and maybe we have been raised differently.
Oh, yes.
And we have this kind of self-esteem problem here in Romania. I don't know, maybe the communist period made a big impact on our psychological life.
Yeah, one of the things I love about my work, aside from traveling and teaching, is that I get to explore the culture. And culture in Romania is a very interesting nation. It's a nation of contrasts, if you ask me. Historically, it's very interesting, and I think you're right. I think the residuals from communism still have an impact in the general psyche of the people here today, Mm-hmm. But I also see Romanians as thriving people, especially the young Romanians. I'm talking people 25 and younger. They are they're more rebellious in a good way. They're more creative. Mm-hmm. And I think that what they're really trying to do is to break the mold, not only from the general construct of what communism is, but also in their lives. They're trying to do things differently. When people tell me, I don't understand why influencers are paid so much, I say, well, because they found a way to do it. Yeah. More power to them. I'm not jealous. If you find a way to entertain people, do it morally and get paid that much money, good for you. I mean, you've found a way. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I mean, there's influencers and then there's influencers, of course. Those who do it, there's a lot of YouTubers out there who do a lot of social work. They make a lot of money, but they do a lot of social causes. And I think that's great. I don't think young people should stay with the same premise you and I were raised, go to school, get married, get a good job, work all your life, and then die. Young people don't want to do that. They want to explore. They want to take risks. And I think that's great. I think that's good for self-esteem. I think that is wonderful for brain health.
Mm-hmm. And what other things are good for brain health?
Well, there's a question that I get asked frequently, and there's two things that I will always support. Okay. If you want to be happy, in general terms, not on a day-to-day basis, but in general terms, and if you want to have positive brain health, there's two things you need to do. One is to sleep well. So you need to protect your sleep. You need to ensure you get good quality sleep. And two, you need to do what you love. Okay. The people who have the highest rates of mental illness, in my experience, are people who don't sleep well and who wake up to go to a job they hate. And they do it for years and years and years and years. They just self-destruct every day, little by little. There's more behaviors that you should take care of, but I think the main one, and the one people are really neglecting today, is that of sleep.
But what do you think that loving your job means? Because there are a lot of people, they don't actually love what they are doing, but they're okay. They are earning a big, okay money. They have a lot of free time, and maybe they can say, "Okay, I love what I'm doing." Is that correct? Or you actually have to love doing that kind of thing every day?
Well, it's very hard to love your job, first of all. So, what your assertion is
for us, I don't think it is. For us, because we are loving what we are doing, but there are a lot of people that are not.
Yeah. I think that you and I are very privileged to do what we do. I know that I'm very privileged and grateful to do what I do. I think that loving means you wake up excited. I like this quote from Ricky Gervais that says, "Mondays are normal. It's your life that sucks."
Okay.
I love that quote because for a long time, I was part of the people who hated Mondays until I realized I'm doing something I like. I don't feel alive doing this. What's important to understand is every job has things you hate. There's things I hate about my job. My life is not perfect. My job's not perfect. Okay, it's great, but there are things about my life that I don't like, that I have to do because I have to do them. And there are things about my job that I don't love doing, but I have to do. But I will say that I look forward to waking up in the morning and working with somebody because I'm going to teach them about brain mapping. I love the fact that I can work with people, do their brain map and give them hope. I am happy when I teach because I see the glare and the glow in the participants' eyes when they're learning and they're excited about this. So I would say if you can 70% of the time enjoy what you do and deal with 30% of boredom, I think that's loving what you do, And I think that's very important because not only keeps you alive, I mean, it's been proven that it secretes these chemicals in your brain that are good for your neurons, that are good for your overall brain growth, that connect you with other people. I think there's a big difference in between I'm okay with my job and I really love what I do.
Yes.
I think it's a huge difference. And not everybody has to love every day at work. Not everybody has to love every day about life. But I think for the most part, you should aim for that.
We are talking about brain, training our brain, being happier and having a better life. But where the heart is? Because I think it's important to talk about the heart because not always what we think, it is in our heart.
Yeah.
How can we balance?
That's a wonderful question. I love that you're asking that because there is this concept called heart rate variability, which is a measurable medical element. And heart rate variability measures the health of your heart. The first organ in the human body that gets impacted by emotions, good or bad, is the heart. It's not the brain.
Okay.
The brain interprets the information, but the heart captures the energy from that, if you will. the heart has an energetic field, which can be sent as a message into the brain. So when you experience joy, the first organ that captures that is your heart, and it sends the message to the brain. When you feel resentment, the same thing. When you feel anger, the same thing. So one of the first organs that we should take care of before the brain is the heart, because that energetic field is also propagated outside into other people. And there's been plenty of research that shows that people can synchronize their heart activity and their brain activity. So when you see actors, you say those actors have chemistry. It's because their hearts and their brains are synchronized. So when they're doing this great scene, or they're in a play, or they're having fun in an interview, it's because the activity syncs up, and we can measure this. This is not science fiction. This is science fact. So taking care of the heart means cultivating resilient emotions is very important. What I mean by resilient emotion is having a realistic frame of mind when it comes to life. Again, what I said, you should like and enjoy what you do, but understand that life sometimes is hard, that life sometimes is painful, that bad things can happen to you, that you will experience the pain of losing a loved one, of betrayal, of disease, and it's part of life. If you can understand that, and realistically say, I can also be happy at the same time, I think that's a winning formula. And the heart is very important. So there are techniques that we can teach people that combine that physiological element and that spiritual psychological level to bring a more robust element of well-being to the person. And ultimately, the brain benefits from that.
That's very interesting that you are saying that you can measure also the heart and the brain and how they are working together. But what about the soul? Because we have a soul.
Well, it's a very good question. I think that spirituality has room in what we do. And I have been watching this growth of neuroscientists who are more interested now in exploring the soul, however you interpret that. We've seen the work of energy healers. We can measure what energy healers can do to people. We're not directly measuring the energy, but we see the changes in the brain. So I think it's wonderful because we can now see that these things have a scientific foundation. And so I think that the soul, from a spiritual perspective, is very important in therapy. Just like religion is, I'm not particularly a religious person, but if I have a religious client, my job is to respect their beliefs to the point they're not impacting their mental health and the mental health of other people. I remember I once had this case in the US. There was this Christian gentleman. Part of his job was to go and evangelize. So they went to the most remote places in Africa, and they were the word of Christ. And he was having some erectile dysfunction problems.
Okay.
So he was very sad about it, and he asked if I could pray with him. I said, yeah, let's pray with him. Let's do some biofeedback while you pray. Are you open to that? He said, yeah. I said, I want you to empty your mind. And he said, I'm not going to do that. He said, that's the moment when the devil comes and challenges you. So I said, this is interesting. How do I go around it? My boss at the time, she was Christian as well. I said, how do I deal with this? She said, ask him to command himself to the Holy Spirit. Ah, there you go. So I went and said, okay, we're going to pray. I want you to empty your mind, but I want you to command yourself to the Holy Spirit. I said, okay, now I can do that. So sometimes you have to work around it, right? Religion has a place, spirituality has a place. I think that as scientists and clinicians, we need to have an open mind. Not too open so our brain falls out, but what we need to do is be open-minded skeptics. And I think when you can connect with people at that level, you see wonderful things happening. And that's what I love about what I do, because I work with so many cultural backgrounds and religious backgrounds. But what connects us is our interest in the brain. So how do I take my beliefs and I respect the beliefs of the person in front of me? How can we make that work for them? How can we make it work for us? And I think that's what humanity needs. If we can get past, the ego and work that way, healing would be a lot more efficient and faster for that matter.
I'm thinking now at the couples, when two people meet and maybe they're together for a few months, years, I don't know, how their brain are harmonizing.
That's a very good question, and we can measure that. I met a few years ago a psychiatrist in the U.S. He's based in Los Angeles, and he does couples therapy. But he only does couples therapy while he has both members of the couple connected to an EEG machine.
Okay.
So he has them argue. Oh, it's fascinating because he has them argue, and he can see brainwave activity. He has them kiss, and he looks at brainwave activity. He sends them home to make love, and when they come back, you can see the brainwave
activity. And what
activity.
he's seeing,
you can see the changes. There's an area here in the front of the brain called the anterior cingulate. It's a very important area for flexibility. So when couples argue a lot, either one or both members have a very overactive region there, which means they're very stubborn. They don't want to listen. They think they're right all the time. So one of the things you do is you can work directly, train that brain area, and when you stabilize it, people become better listeners. They're open to the idea now. Many times couples argue because they have learned patterns throughout their lives that they believe are absolutely right, and they are infallible. But when you train the brain, one of the things you can do is create more flexibility. And when you gain flexibility, you're more open to what the world, what the universe has to offer to you. And I think that's key for healing. So that's a good example that you bring, and we can measure that.
And can couples, go before going to divorce, go to brain map their brain? Maybe they can, resolve their problems?
Not only they can, I think they should. And, one thing that I support is that couples, for example, when my wife, when she was my girlfriend and she was suggesting the idea of marriage, I said, yeah, I would love to marry you one day, but we're both going to do couples therapy before we marry. And she was very happy about it. I said, because we love each other now as boyfriend and girlfriend. Once we get married, things are going to change, even if we don't want to. And I want to do a preemptive strike on those potential problems we're going to have. With the technology today, when couples decide to marry, I think they should do some work and train their brains before they go into marriage, before they coexist, before they create this enterprise, because that's what marriage is. It's an enterprise, right? You're living together. Now you're sharing your traumas. You're sharing your dreams. You're sharing your good habits and your bad habits. You're sharing your finances. All of those things have an impact on the brain. And if you can learn to cope and deal with each other in a more open way, I think the divorce rates around the world would be much lower. I think children from those marriages would be far less traumatized. I think society would have fewer problems if we did that.
Okay, nice. But what about the professionals, the leaders, the sports persons? I don't know. Can they use this kind of technology? We're talking about iMedicine to enhance their performance.
Yes. I have used it with athletes. I have used it with corporates who don't necessarily have dysregulated patterns that would mean anything like anxiety or depression. They just want to get better. They say, I want to become a better salesperson. I want to be more resilient to stress. I want to win more competitions. I want to have better focus under pressure. All of those things we can achieve. You don't have to be quote unquote broken. You don't have to have any sort of dysregulation affecting you to benefit from this. If you just want to be better at what you do, we can make you better. I remember there's a particular set of research with violin players. They took this group of novice beginner violin players and they had them perform in front of the judges. So the judges said, you're at this level. They did 5 or 6 weeks of brain training. They performed in front of the judges again, and they gained 1 year of musical ability with 5 weeks of brain training.
Wow.
The same judges qualified them again. So I don't think there's anything we can, obviously this doesn't fix everything, but we can tap into so many things, and people don't realize that.
If I'm coming, can I come to you and say, I want to have more money? I want to make more money.
I will say, well, let's see how we can train your brain to work the skills that are going to help you make more money. You know, how, let's say, I want to say, let's look at your sales techniques. So let's train your brain to get your sales skills to become better. Your confidence, your delivery, you know, how you persuade people, those things we can train. It doesn't guarantee that you will become a millionaire, but what we can guarantee is that we can work hard for those skills to be better. You know, the rest obviously is up to you.
Nice. But beside this technology, how can we connect to our brain and have a better relation with it?
Okay.
Can we do this?
We can. I think the most important thing, again, I will say the most important thing is sleep. And I cannot emphasize this enough because it's the one behavior that really worries me today. People are really not paying attention to their sleep, and people are sometimes inadvertently, sometimes very willingly destroying the sleep. And brain health is really about sleep. So I think the number one thing people need to do is sleep. Number two,
what sleeping means? Having a good sleep?
It means having good quality sleep. We always go for quantity and quality.
Yes.
So we know that 8 hours, 8 hours is the ideal, is the sweet spot, right? But if you're not getting good quality in those 7-8 hours, is the same as nothing.
But how do you feel when you wake up and you know that you have had a good quality sleep?
Well, first of all, when you fall asleep quicker, right? Okay. And you stay asleep all through the night. When you wake up feeling refreshed. You wake up feeling energy. You wake up, you don't wake up feeling that you need coffee.
No.
If you're getting good sleep.
I think nobody's getting a good sleep.
You're absolutely right. A lot of people are going for the caffeine. And
I didn't knew that.
Yeah. So if sometimes you go for the caffeine, right? And there's not enough coffee in Romania to keep you awake.
Yeah.
Right. So if you need the coffee to stay awake in the morning, you're not getting good sleep.
Okay.
If you wake up, but you feel you need to sleep more, because you feel tired, you feel sluggish, you're not getting good sleep. If you wake up without the need for that, you got good sleep. Can we help that? Yes, we can. Can we help 100% of the population? No, unfortunately, no. But we know that brain training does help with sleep. As a matter of fact, every practitioner that uses the eye medicine, when they work with a client, even if sleep is not the main purpose, the first positive shift the client reports, the patient reports is, I'm sleeping better. So you can work on that. Now, obviously, it should go without saying exercise and good food and all that, you know. Most people are trying that, but most people are really ignoring the sleep. And again, it's this idea that the busier they are, the busier we look, the more stressed we are, the better. We really came to romanticize it, and it's a very dangerous proposition.
You know what I don't like? Not having to do something in a day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I get scared and I feel guilty and I say, okay, I need to do something.
I hear you. And that's a very common brain pattern I see in successful people like you, because your brain operates at a higher frequency. So at a faster frequency, which is not a bad thing. So what I do for folks like you is I train their brain to be able to have the ability to engage in something else, to slow down and rest, but not feel that you're wasting time. Because it's a double-edged sword. It's really double-edged sword. Some people, I've had very successful people tell me, I think sleep is overrated.
Yeah.
If I could go without sleeping, I would, because that's how driven they are. But, you know, that's very dangerous. You can be born with with a brain that enhances peak performance, but that can be as dangerous as the brain of somebody who lacks the motivation, because you need to sleep. I mean, it's a biological need. We cannot bypass it. We can, but we shouldn't bypass it. So in that case, we stabilize the brain to teach the person to down-regulate enough and say, okay, I'm going to sit and read a book without feeling guilty, without feeling useless. That's very important as well.
So we are talking about the relationship with our brain, and you said about sleep.
Yes.
And?
Sleep is very important. I think reducing drama in your life is very important. So reducing drama means surround yourself with people who support you. You know, I like this saying somebody told me a while ago. Your friends are like elevators. They either bring you up or they bring you down. And there's been plenty of research that shows your body weight, your health, your finances are closely related and dictated by the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who you spend time with is really important. Now, you shouldn't spend time only with rich people or fit people, but you should spend time with people who have very low drama. I think reducing drama is very important. Not being in a toxic relationship, you know, avoiding that toxic job environment, a boss is a bully. I think, you know, that's very detrimental. I cannot see anything more dangerous and nothing that destroys brain health more than being in a job where they bully you and they abuse you just for the money. You know, sometimes people have no choices. Fair enough. But most of the time people do. It's just that we get trapped. Again, we get caught up into this idea that a job is a job. And if I quit this job, I'm not going to be successful or anything. I think a very important one, and one that I love, is do things that scare you. I love to say that everything you want in life is on the other side of fear.
Okay, well.
Everything you want in life is on the other side of fear. And unless you can get past the fear or fight through the fear, you're not going to get those things. You know, I dealt with very low self-esteem for a long time in my life. It was not until I learned to trust myself and realize that every new thing that I tried would scare me. And that's when the true transformation came for me. So if you know me now, you would think I've been like this my whole life.
That's why I asked you earlier about self-esteem.
No, I've experienced for many years in my life, I experienced very low self-esteem. And I had very low confidence and I was afraid of success. I was not terrified of failure. I was afraid of success.
Okay.
And now everything that I've accomplished is because I've learned that I need to face the fear. You know, growing up, I had very high social anxiety. I was terrified of speaking in public. And today, the podcast interviews are my favorite thing to do. I love them. I love standing in front of a crowd and teaching. But if you had met me when I was 16, 17, you would have never guessed that this is what I would do for a living today. It's possible to change, right? So if you reduce drama, if you understand that fear is a part of life and you can learn to live and deal with it, I think you can accomplish a lot of wonderful things.
You know, I have the same story. I had a very low self-esteem in high school. Now I'm working in TV for, 17 years now, 18, almost 20 years. I like, presenting events and speaking in front of hundreds of people. But it was the same thing. And I remember that it was one day I had to present an event with all kinds of celebrities. And I was going to go on the stage. And I was so scared. And I said, okay, this is the moment. I just have to go there and face my fear. And be like I'm imagining being, you know? Yeah. And just go there and do the thing, and you're going to be okay. And that was the moment when I became better.
Yeah, that's a breakthrough moment, right?
Yes,
and you do it. You're sweating inside. You're trembling. Yes. maybe you're soiling your pants, but you do it. That's the important thing, you know. It's because we've become conditioned to avoid suffering and pain, and suffering, pain, fear are just part of life. And the more we avoid it, the more it takes us away from the things we want. And it was not until I learned that sometimes bad things are going to happen to me, that I'm going to lose loved ones, that sometimes things are not going to go my way. When I learned to accept that, that's when I had the transformation. And I think that's important for people to understand, because many times people see me in my position and think that, that I've been living this life essentially since I was born. And they could not be more wrong. So if I could do it, if you could do it, anybody can do it. I think we're a good testament to that.
Yes, and to be honest, this is my first podcast in English, and I was a little bit scared before.
Oh, you're doing wonderful.
Okay. And about talking about facing our fears.
Yes.
I could I don't know, bring a translator or something like this, but I said, okay, we have to do this.
No, I think we're both doing well. I mean, English is not my first language either, so I hope I'm doing okay.
So, well, it was a fear, but I faced it. How this technology, medicine, can help us and traditional psychology cannot?
Well, I think that they intersect. I'm not here to say that this technology will replace psychology. I think this technology helps psychology be better. Mm-hmm. And how so? Most of the people who come to see me, they will say, talk therapy doesn't work. And I will say, no, that's not true. The fact that talk therapy didn't work for you at a specific moment, it's because your brain is not ready for it. Your brain is not wired in a way that's ready for it. Mm-hmm. And they go, okay. So I say, let's do some brain training. And we do some brain training. I will then suggest the idea of going back to therapy. And 70 to 80% of people say, yep, you're right. I know what you mean now. I was not ready to understand. Now I can go back. And some people go back and benefit from it. And some people will say, I think I'm good. Not everybody needs it. But the whole idea is that this can enhance psychotherapy. This does not replace therapy. Mm-hmm. This does not replace a good therapist. It makes a good therapist better. And that's the whole idea. And
how do you see the future of psychology?
I think,
I don't know, in 20 years.
My hope is that this technology would be available everywhere. Mm-hmm. It would be part of every doctor's office. So it would be as routine. A QEEG brain map would be as routine as getting your mammogram, your prostate exam. It would be an annual checkup. It would be part of schools where they scan students at the beginning of the year. And if the student's struggling, we understand why and we can help them more efficiently. It would be part of colleges and universities where we could avoid suicide and depression. It would be part of shelters for abused women where we can help them. It would be accessible to law enforcement, first responders who are traumatized because of the work. My hope is that this technology is more scalable and is present and more people embrace it.
Santiago, where can people find you?
My Instagram is neurosantiago and my website is santiagobrand.com, so they can reach me there and they can find info on my YouTube channel and then my Instagram, which is neurosantiago.
Thank you so much.
I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.